All right, so when it comes to Thinset, this is going to be a pain point for some people. Really, there isn't really much of a premix type of Thinset that I know of that is good for walk-in showers, especially going over a waterproof board. So you're going to have to mix this stuff. It really is going to be, it's really not that bad. It's just a matter of getting the right texture, the right consistency, because if it's too thick, it's not going to bond to the towel. You're going to have struggle with it. It's going to not last very long, which is really problematic. But with something like a 12 by 24, you want to get something that is, this is considered a large format tile, believe it or not. Even though the tiles keep getting bigger and bigger, this is still considered a big tile. So you want to use something that is modified and that is, you know, basically for large tile. So this is for a large and heavy tile. This is Mapei. This is a very light weight mortar. It's something that gives you a little bit of non-sag quality to it, so it should be able to stick to the wall easily. This is pretty kind of a similar product to Ardex X5, which is one of my favorite Thinsets, or it is my favorite Thinset. I've just done it every single course. I seem to use the Ardex 5 just because I've done, you know, basically at least 40 showers with the Ardex X5, and once you get used to a certain Thinset, you don't really want to change. But this stuff, I've been using it for, this is my third or fourth bag, and I'm actually pretty damn happy with it. It's really not bad. I don't know the pot life of it because I haven't really allowed it to sit in the bucket for, you know, more than a couple of hours, but it gave me plenty of time to do everything I wanted to do with it. But the mixture of it, with the bigger tile, you kind of want to mix it to the max ratio of water, and I would say even add a little bit more than that. I've been finding that most Thinsets, whatever they say the amount is, just add like an extra half a quart, usually makes the perfect consistency. Sometimes they like to have it a little too thick. So this is going to be 6.5 quarts per bag. So this is 6 quarts right here. And we'll just add a little bit more. And we're going to kind of take a look at the consistency too, to see what it what it looks like. But I want like a nice pancake batter. I don't want something that's too thick. I already have to add more. All right, so about 2 minutes of mixing. We'll let this sit for another 5 minutes while we do the layout. But at this point, you really can't add any more water. So it's not quite falling off the, I mean, it's falling off the trowel, but it's not too loose. It's like a pancake consistency. That's what I'm looking for. It'll thicken up a little bit more with it sitting, but then we'll just mix it up. But yeah, I mean, this is the consistency I'm looking for. It's like a pancake batter. If it's too thick, it really does become a problem bonding to the tile. And with these bigger tiles, you can afford to be a little loose. You're better off to be a little loose than too thick, because the loose mixture is always going to have a good bond, whereas a thicker consistency, you know, sometimes won't actually stick to the tile. So let's go over the layout while this sits. Okay, so our original plan, it was just to bring the towel over the drywall slightly. So giving us a good like inch beyond our curb. That's ideal. I just think it's really important to go right along the side of the curb with tile, so that when if water does come out, it's not going to be hitting against drywall. So our original goal was to be right on top of the floor, but now that we have the niche set, let's just kind of evaluate what it's going to be with a half tile. You know, basically centering it on the niche. So this is 12-inch tile. So if we bring this down to 6 inches to the middle of that shelf, something like that, and then just simply mark it going down the wall. And you're going to have like a 16th inch grout joint, depending on your design. So just kind of space that out a little bit there. Okay, so that leaves us, yeah, so we got almost pretty much a full towel there at the bottom. Let's go double check to see what it looks like at the top. And you can see the cut mark that's going to be around here. So that's a nice full piece above and a nice full piece down below. Those are going to be the two hardest cuts in this entire shower, is doing the L cuts around the niche. And then this is where it's nice to have a mosaic. I mean, technically, if I wanted to just do 12 by 24s and do nothing else, I'm willing to accept 4 inches. I think that looks all right. But what we're gonna do is a mosaic. So that'll fill in that area completely. So I think most likely we're gonna end the tile right here. We'll probably put our border here, and then we'll have one piece above. So that should work out pretty well. I would just, you know, so you got 4 inches there. Well, actually, 4 of these are 4.5. So we got a good 1/2 inch of playroom all the way around the top of the ceiling. So I know that I'll be able to cut this tile down and make it fit. Now, most of you are not going to have a wooden ceiling like this. So, you know, this is definitely a little bit different. What I think I'm going to do when I get up there, because I really don't want a caulk joint. I don't want a caulk joint like that, because you technically would want to leave a little space and then caulk that. I don't want to see that. I think what I'm going to do is actually just cut the wood and allow us to just sit up and have a raw cut that go up there. This is cedar, so it's something that can resist moisture. Not that it's going to get a whole lot, but I just want to hide the cut. I don't want to caulk against the wood, because this expansion and contraction of it will most likely, you know, crack that joint. So, but if this was a regular drywall ceiling, what I would do is just use a poly sealant caulk and then paint it the same as the ceiling. I do have tutorials further down in the course on other projects that I did exactly that. But a wood ceiling, definitely unique. But other than that, 12 by 24s, you just want to center it up. And yeah, you want to do the back wall first, primarily because when you can be a little bit more flexible on your cuts, and then when the tile comes this way, you can't really see, you know, it's really hard to see this joint unless you're in the shower. So in my opinion, you're better off to hide your cut mark so that when you're looking at the shower, you're not seeing that. But yeah, so order of operation, setting the floor. We set that last night so we can walk over it, do the back wall, side walls, and then you're done. So, but all right, so let's get my laser. Couple of tools that I think are really important to have setting 12 by 24s. I'd say the number one that's going to make it really easy for you is leveling clips. So this is a wedge and clip system. They make a lot of different styles out there. You can get twist caps, whatever. It doesn't really matter as long as it's a leveling clip that holds it together. The only advice I would make as far as grout joints is paying attention to the flatness of your edge. Most porcelain tiles have a little bit more of a wedge coming out at the bottom. So when you put a clip on here, so if I'm going to be using 16th inch spacers, you're going to have a little bit bigger than a 16th inch gap because, you know, this bottom portion is sticking up. That's just kind of the nature of porcelain tile. But if you're doing marble, stone, that's usually really straight, flat cuts. So you can, you know, this is just basically a minute detail about the grout spacing. So depending on what side you want your grout joints will depend on, you know, the rectified edge of these tiles. The other thing you just want to pay attention to is the curvature of it. 12 by 24s usually aren't that bad. So if you wanted to do this half pattern, you could. The recommendation on most of these tiles though are third patterns, so that when the bow of this tile, you don't have lippage in between. But most 24 inch tiles, unless they're really, really bad, you can do half patterns and be totally fine. And that's where these leveling clips are going to help out a lot. The other thing would be horseshoe spacers. I think these are way, way easier to use than the regular rubber spacers you get from the box stores. This is going to allow you to put a gap between the floor. It's very universal, helpful to space things. I'm going to be using a Euro notch trowel, but you can use something like a 1/4 by 3/8 or a 3/8 by 3/8 inch trowel. You want to get something that's a little bit bigger than a 1/4 by 1/4 for these bigger tiles. You always want to check coverage when you're setting these, just to make sure you're getting the right thin set. bondage, and if you need to get it, if you're not seeing a full coverage, we'll demonstrate that a little bit later, then you want to move up to a larger trowel size so that you make sure you get the coverage on the tile. The other thing you want to pay attention to with trowel size is how flat your surface is. So if you're overcoming, like say if this board was kind of bellowed out and you have a 1/4 inch deflection going into the corner, you might want to use a 1/2 by 1/2 inch trowel so that you can have more thinset and more play to make everything flat. The only other thing that I think is an imperative tool is using a laser level. I honestly don't know how I ever worked without one of these, because it just makes it so much easier, especially with a shower pan like this where it's all sloping downhill. I can measure down, get my cuts, you know, and I'm going to be referencing as this goes up, because if you can make this back wall completely level, it's going to make the rest of the shower a lot easier. And obviously you want to make all the grout joints aligning all the way around. So laser level, laser pulled to be able to adjust things, make a big difference. And we'll show you a couple of other tools that are helpful. Not all of them are necessary, but you are going to need a grinder to cut around a specialty valve like that. You're going to need some hole saws for this. So there is some investment with doing tile. There's no way around it. But these are the big items that I think you definitely want to have before you get started, because getting a nice flat wall with this stuff is going to make it look professional. So, all right, so we got our layout planned. So let's just mark, let me get this out of here. So we got basically 59 inches, so 29 and a half. I mean, honestly, all you have to do is make sure that your cuts are even on either side to be centered. So it's usually like 17 and a half, or yeah, 17 and a half, 17 and a half. I like to start out with my tile with the bigger pieces on the bottom like this, because it's a little bit easier, because I don't have 4 pieces of tile to scribe towards the pan. But also when I do the sides, I like to be able to do a full tile here at the bottom and then have your cut mark here. So then when basically it'll look like a full tile folded in the corner. So if you start with your back piece in the center, then you have 3 pieces at the bottom and everything folds into each other. It's really personal preference. It doesn't really matter which way you do it. I've just found that this is kind of a nice way to do it. All right, so then let's go ahead and put a couple horseshoe spacers down. Okay, so you do want to have a spacer to the floor. So I'm just gonna measure off of that spacer, and then we'll measure to the laser. 10 and a 16th to 9 and 9/16. Let's mix this up again. You can use a snap cutter when you're cutting something this much. And I do like using a snap cutter for most things, because it gives a little bit of a cleaner cut. But obviously a wet saw can work too. There we go, perfect. Make sure it goes right along that laser. All right, so applying Thinset, use the flat side of the trowel, kind of work it into the substrate a little bit here. Just use directional troweling. And back butter the tiles. So we got We got plenty of room here now. We've got 17.5, so we can make it like 17.25. Let's say like 10 3/8, 10 3/16. Make sure that laser stays nice. You can even feel the between the tiles here. This tool is not a tiling tool, but I definitely love it because you're able to wedge things in and get things nice and tight. And just these wedge clip systems, just pull it together and make sure you move that together. But yeah, most important thing on that first row is just paying attention to that laser, feeling the edges of your tile. Anything that you're off on the first row just kind of grows on you, so you really want to pay the attention on this first row. And I should say, not all towel cutters are equal. This is a very nice towel cutter. I've had this for, I don't even know, probably a decade at this point. And it's just a very precise tool. You can hear, like, it's very, you don't put a lot of pressure on your handle. You just listen for the sound. So you can hear that scoring. It doesn't take a lot of pressure and it just clips right off. So I really do like using a cutter because it makes a nice clean look. There's like no chips or nothing. And it's a little bit easier on your ears. Cutting with a wet saw, you always have to constantly, so this is going, yeah, this way. So we got 9 3/16. Looks like a little bit of bow out here at the bottom. I'll have to cut that down a little bit. Okay, so perfect. Everything's all nice and aligned. Now it's going to be super easy from here on out. And then those leveling clips make everything nice and even. But you could see, you know, these clips even being tightened here, I'm almost getting like almost like an 1/8 inch grout joint. So if you wanted smaller grout joints than that, then you want to do 1/32 inch clips. These are 1/16, meaning like right here is 1/16. So that's what's going to create that space. But you can get 1/32 inch clips and give yourself a little bit more room. But now it's really, you know, pretty much easy from this point on. We can just go right off of that, move the laser up, and be good to go.